Greetings, clobberers, and Happy New Year from Clobby'S Comics Corner. Spinner Rack Time Machine. Here we are, 1972, 50 years ago. We have traveled back. If you are, perchance, just seeing this video, just coming across this, and you're a comics fan, you love comics history, there's, of course, a link in my description below, a playlist to all of my Clobby'S Comics Corner Spinner Rack Time Machine videos, but a brief explanation. I've decided to take my time machine, which is a TARDIS that is a chameleon circuit stuck in the shape of a Hey Kids Comics spinner rack from the Bronze Age of comics, and I've decided on a nice round number of 50 years. And I take it and I turn it into Clobby'S Comics Corner, my comic shop. I have owned a comic shop in the past, a long time ago. I'm very old, and worked in a few, run a few, of course. And I just miss these days a lot. And so I went back even beyond the time I was going to comic shops. There were a few shops. There weren't very many back then, but this is a time machine, so you could do what you like. In this case, just as if you have a folder or a pull list at your local comic shop, if you still do, I have not for some time. We go in each week in this case, now in January of 1972, and I pick about 8 to 9 or so titles that I would have collected, combining my then very, very young Bronze Age Bronze Age baby sensibilities with my 50 years later sensibilities a little bit. And I pick 8, 9 titles, sometimes 10 each week. And then, of course, I do a follow-up video the next day called Clobby'S Quick Bits, where I just kind of talk about the other comics that didn't quite make the cut, because it's a very, it's a very big market out there at this point. This is a thriving comic book industry, as I always say. And as you can see here by my source, the great Mike's Amazing World comics page, and a blog, and I highly recommend this for researching comics of any kind, and just for having a lot of fun looking at comics. You can look at what comics came out the day you were born, the month you were born, the year you were born, what have you. Any year, it's really extraordinary. And as you can see, just with a very little example, there were a lot of titles. And not everyone collected everything, just the same way it is now, for the most part. So what I do is, on the primary video, I just show you the ones that stand out for me. I'm a geek. I'm mostly a superhero comics geek. A lot of it's big two-ish for the most part, but I buy the science fiction, fantasy related stuff, the superhero stuff. But again, I'll give a little bit of love the next day to some of the ones that I did not pick up that you might have picked up. So please, I know it takes a long time to set everything up every time. I'm sorry for that for those who've watched before, but not everyone has seen it. Not everyone has seen these videos. You never know when someone new might pop along. So, and please let me know in the description below, to which there are many links to great YouTube channels and my sources. If there are any of these my picks you disagree with, or that you agree with, or some of the things that you would have picked up. Anyway, let's start out with Primus #2 from Charlton. Yes, I picked up #1 last month, and again, just kind of tickled me. This was a show made by the producers of Sea Hunt. Yes, I'm old. It's an old show, Sea Hunt, the old Lloyd Bridges show, but this was a cut rate version for syndicated television. In other words, very cheap, but it was very similar to that show and concept. And Charlton, as they did a lot, there were lots and lots and lots of TV tie-in comics from Charlton, from Gold Key, from Marvel and DC weren't doing much of it. Those other guys were doing it. And this is one of them, and this was a syndicated series featuring Robert Brown, yes, from the greatest episode of Star Trek ever, actually considered one of the worst ones ever. That we love Star Trek here, by the way. Check us out for Saturday Night Star Trek if you can. Yes, but he was in The Alternative Factor. Good actor, though. And there's a comic. Of course, In this case, the stories by Joe Gill and art by the Joe Staton, a name you'll know if you know anything about, uh, Bronze Age comics. So, next up is we're at DC. DC's got a bunch of big stuff. Everything's big at this point. And this is full reprints. A lot of one of their big. I love the DC $100. Excuse me, 100. Yeah, there was $100 now. It's 50 cents actually. I love the DC Comics 100-page specials, super spectaculars, world's greatest super females, 100 action-packed pages of story and art from cover to cover. It sports a pretty nifty Bob Oxner cover. I mean, I have to give Bob Oxner some credit on this. I think he used a lot of cuts and pastes for some other people's art. Nevertheless, it's a nicely put together cover. Always got to love a wraparound. It's sort of a wraparound, and it's got the ladies on there, a lot of the super ladies. So you got to love that. From 1972 January, week 1, in the comic shop. It has reprints from many places: Action Comics, Flash Comics, Wonder Woman, Police Comics, Star Spangled Comics, and then it's got a lot of stuff. Leo Dorfman, Robert Kanigher, William Moulton Marston are the writers in these reprints. Art by luminaries of the Golden Age and Silver Age, such as Jim Mooney, Carmen Infantino, H.G. Pitar, Wonder Woman co-creator, along with William Moulton Marston, Frank Borth, and again, an aforementioned Bob Oxner cover. So you got to like those. Got to love those covers. Next up is Daredevil number 86. Love me some DD. You all know I'm a big Daredevil fan. This was when Jerry Conway was writing the series, and it's smack dab in that wonderful Gene Cole and Tom Palmer era. Great art for Daredevil at that point. The Man Without Fear. Again, the Bronze Age Man Without Fear. A few months back, I did a show about that specialized talking a little bit about the pre-Miller, i.e. Silver Age, Bronze Age Daredevil, the fun-loving superhero Daredevil that I kind of miss. I love the Miller stuff. Don't get me wrong if you're new here. But I kind of missed the guy that was around 15, 16 years before that. And, of course, this one's sports. Interestingly enough, not something someone usually associate with Daredevil. John Buscema, the great John Buscema, big John Buscema, as they say, on the cover as the Daredevil, of course, fights Ox. Next up, whole lot of reprinting going on again from Marvel. This would be the Mighty Marvel Western featuring the Rawhide Kid, Kid Colt, Outlaw, that they used to call him anyway, Two Gun Kid. Reprints from Rawhide Kid 10, Rawhide Kid 7, Kid Colt Outlaw 44, and Two Gun Kid 52. Writers Don Rico, Joe Gill, Stan Lee, artistes Dick Ayers, Jack Keller, John Severin, covered by the great John Severin. I love it. His Western covers are just amazing on this. Again, there were a lot of Marvel and DC. We talk about this all the time here on the Spinner Rack Time Machine. We're sure big on the reprints. It's funny how, this was before they'd come up with the idea of doing it in trade paperback form or in hardcover form. They did a few not in the Bronze Age, but not like this. Traditionally, they would either stick them in with a few new stories, not in this case, and and make it an oversized comic, or they would just do your stuff like this or your Marvel Tales and Marvel's Greatest Comics. Either way, they were doing a lot of reprinting back then. Next up, the Mighty Thor, number 198, getting big, close to a landmark there. Jerry Conway again on the story writing detail. Art by, of course, the great Big John Buscema. Inks by the not-so-great Vince Colletta. Let's just be honest. Vinny Colletta, when I'm going to pretend. But still, it's great. I do like this run. Fortunately, the cover by John Buscema pencils has inks by the great Joe Sennett. So, love me some Thor. And this is a fun era. Of course, it's bronze, of course. Next up, another Western. Mostly reprints. From this is, of course, the Western Kid. This is the Western Kid Volume 2, actually, not the old one from the 50s. But it has some reprints from Volume 1 number 3 and 4. Has a a Ride Kid reprint in there as well. Stories by Stanley, and some of the other ones are uncredited. Not easy to research reprints all the time. With art by the great John Romita and the great Al Williamson. Love that. And again, another nifty John Severin Western cover. I love me a John Severin Western cover, as I believe I have indicated. Next up, fascinating cover here. Wonder Woman 199. Story, of course, Denny O'Neil. For the first story, Denny O'Neil, Don Heck. I know he went to Wonder Woman many, many years later, but he apparently popped on there a couple of times. Just, Don Heck, kind of think of him as a DC guy, but he was at Marvel. I mean, a Marvel guy, but he wasn't. Went to DC, definitely. Maybe been moonlighting at this point, but definitely went to DC in the bronze. Dick Giordano on the inks, of course. Secondary story is a reprint from Robert Kanigher, Ross Andrew, Mike Esposito. I believe that was a Wonder Girl story. And the cover is by Jeffrey Jones, who was a well-known fantasy artist that did very, very little comic book work back in the 70s. He has a lot of fantasy stuff, but he did do some. He did some Wonder Woman covers. He just didn't do a lot, but he did enough for people to know his work. I know his work. He was an interesting artist for sure. So, very good stuff. And this was in Wonder Woman's not wearing a costume phase, not wearing her Star Spangled costume phase, which was always a little weird, around sort of like her Emma Peel era. Some of us called it, or around that point. Next up is Our Fighting Forces 136, with of course the losers, as in of course Captain Storm, Johnny Cloud, Gunner, and Sarge. Stories, Robert Kanigher, art, John Severin. Story 2, Robert Kanigher, and then Frank Thorne. Some rare DC work for Frank Thorne. Not rare, I mean he did some stuff for it, but you know. Story 3 is a reprint from GI Combat 52. Robert Kanigher, and of course the extraordinary Joe Kubert. 4 is a reprint, Our Army at War 53. Bob Haney, my buddy Bob Haney. Boy, I got a lot of Bob Haney talk coming up on Clobber Times. Russ Heath, of course, the great Russ Heath on the art, and the great Sam J. Glanzman on the 5th story, and of the legendary Joe Kubert on the cover. Of course, War Comics. John Severin does some nifty ones too, but the master of the War Comic will always be Joe Kubert. And finally, we have what an extraordinary Neil Adams cover on the Phantom Stranger number 18. Story and art for story 1 would be Len Wein and Tony DeZuniga. Story 2 is a reprint from Sensation Mystery number 11, or 111, I'd say. Jack Miller, Irwin Hessen, and Bernard Sachs. That's some golden age-ness there, if I ever heard it. Story 3 is not a reprint, however. Steve Skates, Tony DeZuniga. 4 would be a reprint from House of Secrets 59, Jack Miller and Mort Meskin. And again, what a spectacular cover by the great Neil Adams. Of course, he was just, one day I'll be talking about cover artists in specific for that era, and he's just one of the greats. So, all right, folks, the next video will be Clobby'S Quick Bits, and what I will do is talk a little bit about show you a little bit of the ones that missed the cut, that didn't quite make it. But until then, well, look, here we are, 1972, my friends. We're in 1972. Some of us are in 2022, but I like being in 1972. When it comes to comics, I do. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please like and subscribe. I hope you will. And again, check out the other videos in my Spinner Rack Time Machine playlist. Go to my channel and see if there's any other videos you might like. I stream all the time. Monday nights are all about comics. Wednesday nights are wild card. It can be comics. I got a comics review coming up this Wednesday. And Saturday nights are all about Star Trek, reviewing all of real Star Trek. And I do a lot of other things. A few other things. Maybe a lot. I'm going to make more videos tomorrow. Later today, actually, the Quick Bits video will drop soon after this one. but then I'll start spreading them out a little bit, and I'll try to make it on Wednesdays when I can, but sometimes they'll be Thursdays. Occasionally, like today, Friday, but I'll try to be faster with the video. And I want finally a big shout out to not only my top engineer, of course, the great Mark D with a C, but also my wonderful, amazing first officer who made this great intro, outro for me. I love you, RM Raquel Briggs. And to all of you clobberers who have been such fantastic friends, it would be a crime to name one of you because it would have to name you all, and you know my dumb memory. I don't have it written in front of me. I just know that you're all fantastic. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for always being here. And you know we single you out on Saturday Night Star Trek if you're there. So, and again, so many of you have just been just great. You're clobberers to me. You always will be. So thank you all so much again, and I hope to see you on the next video and the next live stream. Clobber on, clobberers!